I'm Nigel the North. One of the most frequently asked questions by people interested in Bentley ownership is, should I do it? It makes absolutely no sense at all to buy a Bentley Continental, unless you're a millionaire, or a billionaire actually. But at some point in our lives, we get to see that a vehicle that is just incredibly exotic and expensive and something we never thought we should buy is available to us at a price that we can actually afford to pay for it. But here's the thing, buying it is just the beginning. And in this guide, I'm hoping to show you a realistic way of looking towards buying a Bentley. It might put some of you off, and if that's the case, then that's probably a good thing. Watch on and let me know what you think in the comments. So this is a little bit about my journey towards being a Bentley owner, or custodian, I would prefer to say, actually, because you don't ever really own the damn things. A couple of years ago I bought a really nice BMW 6 Series, it was 640M spec, twin turbo diesel, and it was an absolute rocket ship. Fantastic car, one of the best cars, or the best looking cars I ever owned. But unfortunately last January all that changed when, after dropping my grandson off home, it spontaneously combusted and burnt to a crisp. The insurance company eventually paid me out a certain amount of money, and I looked around the market to see what kind of a car I could get. And I'd always fancied an S-Class Mercedes, so I drove a couple of S-Class Mercs, but it just didn't feel like an S-Class Merc. It didn't feel like they used to do. The last time I drove one was probably 1998, and it was a 300S, and it was a fantastic lump of a car. And then I thought, well, I'll try Jags. The Jags are beautiful looking cars, so I tried an XJ6, and is it an XJ6? I don't know. But it looked like a funeral car basically, and it looked like a funeral car inside, and it drove like a Rover 820. I mean, I liked Rover 820s, but if I wanted a Jaguar, then it needed to feel like I was driving a Steamliner, and it just didn't do it for me. And while I was in the same place, actually in Middlesbrough, looking at these two cars, I happened to know that there was a Bentley Continental, and it was in my price range. But I knew it made absolutely no financial sense whatsoever. It was crazy. So I went to look at it knowing full well I wasn't going to buy it. And the moment I saw it, I just fell in love. It was a ridiculous prospect. It wasn't a car, not really. It was a work of art. And it reminded me actually of my favourite ever Bond car. It just had the shape and colour of Bond's DB5. And I've always been a secret pretender. So it came into my head that perhaps I could buy this car. And then over the next few weeks, I actually spent quite a lot of my Saturdays driving backwards and forwards from Scarborough to Middlesbrough to check this car out and crawl around underneath it and check everything I was learning on the forums and websites and everybody else was saying about these cars, what went wrong, what was good, what to look out for and everything else. Even before I drove the car, I had intimate knowledge of it. Yeah. And eventually I decided I wanted to buy it. So I made the man an offer, subject to a test drive, because I'm no tyre kicker if I'm anything else. And he accepted it. He was selling it on behalf of a friend. And I drove the car, and it was okay. There were a bit problems on the brakes. It didn't take off like I expected it to, and the bugger hadn't put any fuel in it for me, so that didn't help. But nonetheless, I still saw enough of it and felt enough of it to think, yeah, this is a totally different beast. It felt like a car that was built in, and not in a bad way, in the 1970s or 80s. It had that feeling of quality and weight, and it had a style about it, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. So I decided to buy it. But by this point, I realised that actually paying for the car, the sticker price, as those American cousins would say, is only the beginning of the journey. I needed to have enough money behind me to pay for the worst of the worst problems, or as near as damn it. And I figured that figure. I paid 15 for the car, and I had 10,000 left over to actually repair it when it went wrong. as I was convinced it certainly would in some respects. And I wasn't disappointed. If you subscribe to the channel, I'll tell you all about the repairs that I've done and the repairs that I'm going to do. And I'm also going to do some Q&A type stuff with a lot of commonly asked questions for people coming into Bentley ownership or quite new to it, or they've maybe had them years and have experienced the same sort of difficulties. I will say this though, for all the naysayers and all of the people that have had very disappointing experiences, there is one major change that you need to make if you're going to buy one of these cars. So don't mind the dog, that's Trixie. And that is the frame of mind, the state of mind you're in. This isn't a car, this isn't driving, this is motoring. And there's a big difference. You're not the owner of this car, you're just a custodian of it. And you have to take the responsibility seriously, and you have to look after it, and you have to be prepared to be looked at by a lunatic, by all of your family and friends and people who love you, because of the amount of money and time you're prepared to spend on this. Now, on the subject of money, if you can get handy with the wrenches, and I'm a plumber, I'm not a mechanic. I was in the motor trade for a long time, but I was never a mechanic. If you can get handy with the wrenches, you can save yourself an awful lot of money. For example, I recently changed my oil. Right, and this is a job which I'm told is part of a 6,000 mile service, which is 500 quid at Bentley, and involves some other checks. But essentially it's really just oil, a new oil plug or a crush washer, and a new filter, and the time it takes to do it. Well, I can tell you that even with the right materials, you can do this job yourself at home in about 2 hours for about 150 quid. Now, you can't even get a Ford Fiesta 6-month service for 150 quid. I don't think. Comment down below if I'm wrong. I'm talking out of my bum. But I just think that's really good value for money if you're prepared to put the time in yourself and the effort. So mechanical considerations and things to look out for when you're looking for your car. Obviously, there's the basic things that you should do with any car, but it's especially important with a car of this value. Things like the service history. You know, and I don't mean just it's stamped up in the book. Look for an example that's got a document folder full of bills detailing exactly what's been done and when. It's really worth its weight in gold if you know that the vehicle's had vacuum lines replaced as a big job, 10 years ago. That's going to save you an awful lot of heartache, because in the vehicles between 2004 2007, Bentley in their wisdom had routed some vacuum lines and relays, or servos, on top of the gearbox. And it means that you've got to take the engine out to fix something that really should cost a few quid. So that's a bit of a pain in the neck. On the same subject, it's amazing how many jobs require the engine to come out. So you're looking at 5 grand. And if you ever do take the engine out, you need to be prepared to replace a lot of stuff that could be going in short order. Things like starter motors, alternators, engine mounts, vacuum lines, oxygen sensors, things that you can't get to. Even catalytic converters, if you're thinking there's anything wrong with them at all, need to be changed while you've got that job out. Now, there's mechanics on the Bentley user forums and things who could give you a great deal more detail because they've got the experience of doing it, and I'm sure you'll find those out. But in normal terms, you need to be looking for suspension dropping. If you leave it for an hour with the engine off, does it tilt down to one side a little bit? Is the brake pedal feeling good? Can you hear a motor running in the offside wing, or fender as you'd call it in America? Can you hear a motor running a lot continuously? That could be the sign of a leak. Ultimately, what I would say is if you've made the decision to buy a Bentley Continental or any other exclusive car like this, it's worth buying a tool to diagnose problems with it before you buy it. It's a great bargaining tool. Bless them, the owners may not even be aware, but some of them might, and they'll accept knocking some money off for the cost of replacing these things. So the one I use is called VCDS. It's made by Rostec in the USA, and essentially what it is an ODB11 lead that comes in a nice little box, and the software that you run it on is freely available from Rostec. From their website, you download it to a Windows-based laptop computer with a good battery. So you've got your lead, you've got your computer, and you've got your software installed. There are videos that I've I've published which show you how to do this for the first time, and I'm going to do a series of more complex ones as I go along. But essentially what you need to be able to do is plug this into a vehicle you're looking at, read the codes off it before you have a test drive. Save the codes, clear the codes, take it for a good hour's drive, come back and do the same and see what persistent problems, what DTCs, dynamic trouble codes, come back after you've had that 1 hour drive, but you must have an hour in it. You're going to spend the rest of your life paying for it. You deserve to have an hour. So if you go and turn up and there's no fuel in it, take it to a garage. Don't be tight. Fill it up. If you go ahead and buy a Bentley, you're going to need this software. You're going to need this lead, because whenever a light comes on, which will be any time it feels like it, you need to be able to diagnose it. You need to be able to clear it if it's just a nuisance fault. And you don't need to be going to Bentley to do this at the prices that they're obviously going to charge, because they're in business to make money. Come on, let's be fair. So that would be the overriding important information I would give you. Go prepared, spend the cash. It's about 200 quid. And if you're really serious about getting a Bentley, you'll get your money's worth out of it eventually. So in addition to the vacuum lines, as I've already said, you need to be aware of how much electronic stuff is going on in the Bentley. And you need to check that it's all working. So that's electric seats, it's electric windows, it's the locking system, it's the keyless entry system, it's the alarm system, it's the boot opening mechanism, it's the infotainment center to make sure that all of the functions are working as they should. Your radio's working, there isn't an amp blown, there's no speakers blown out. All of this stuff matters. It may be a 20-year-old car, and the seller might say that, but at the end of the day, you've got it to repair, and some of these things are essential, and some of these things are just damned annoying if you don't get them fixed. So you've got to work it into the deal. You've got to work it into the price that you're going to pay, because you are going to want to have it done at the end of the day. As I said before, even the condition of the wheels. Trust me, when you've got a beautiful car like this and you spend your Sunday cleaning it up and ignoring your family, there's nothing worse than standing back and looking at all those curb scrapes that you've got on the wheels. If they're not right, you're looking at 800 to £1,000 to get them done. It's no small job. You know, these are not split rims, but they do come apart, and each of those parts has to be treated individually to get the finish right. So be prepared to barter and haggle your way to a decent deal. And a decent deal is where you pay the right amount of money for a car, knowing how much more money you've got to spend on it. One of the most important things you can check for are damp patches. Whether you're buying the GT or the Spur, you need to be checking under the carpets in the passenger front footwell, because if there's any sign of damp there, it could signify that the front drain channels underneath the heater unit, under the grille, may be blocked, and it may be allowing water to build up in there and leak over into the footwell, and that's where your Kessie unit is. Now your Kessie unit controls your locking and various of the comfort functions. So if your Kessie unit goes wrong, you'll stop recognising the key, and if that happens, it's an expensive job. It's probably got to be replaced and reprogrammed to the keys, or your keys have got to be programmed to that. I think it's the other way around, because the Kessie has to work with all the other control units and modules in the car as well. So yeah, it's a big job, quite involved, at least £1,000, you know, and that's if you can get a second-hand one. So look for damp patches. The other popular place for damp patches is in the boot. The boot spoiler, as cool as it is, has a great gutter in it, and that gutter has 2 drain holes, and those drain holes are attached to rubber pipes that run down the inside of your boot lid under the carpets, and are supposed to drain out onto the rear bumper. But that pipe can either come apart, it can pull off, it can get blocked up. Somebody may have tried blowing it clear with an airline and it's been too badly blocked and it's come apart. But that can damage the electronics in your boot as well, and lead to obviously dampness, smell and mold and all the other stuff that you don't want. So keep an eye on it. They're easily fixed by a couple of hours job, and usually not an awful lot of money. Some mastic, some pipe cleaners to clean the pipes through, things like that. So they are manageable, but if it's been doing it for a while, then you could be looking at an expensive repair because of the electronics that are in there. Well, we're on about electronics. These cars have two batteries. They have a main system battery on the left-hand side, and then they have a starter battery on the right-hand side of the boot. If these fail, if they haven't been changed, if they've been allowed to go flat, particularly the main battery, they may not even recharge again. And when that happens, the car will come up with loads of faults. Most of them erroneous, and most of them down to the fact there is insufficient voltage and bad readings coming back from modules and sensors. They're not that expensive. You could probably do the pair for 500 quid and get really decent quality ones. But it is important to know that if they're going flat, you'll experience things like warning lights on the dash. You might get the passenger rear window dropping down and not coming back up again. Well, more on that in a minute. And this is all an indicator that the battery's gone flat at some point and the windows need to be reprogrammed to work properly. Now you can do that as a user with nothing more than your car key and a little bit of time. And I'm going to do a guide on recalibrating your windows and your seats at some point. While we're talking about the rear windows, there is a common problem on them where the actuator, which has a plastic cog inside of it, strips, and it basically just drops to the ground or stops working altogether. You can fix these. There is a repair kit available for them, or you can replace the whole actuator unit, which probably isn't needed. But if you park on the street like I do, that could be a major concern. You don't want to leave a car with a window open in Scarborough's sunny weather. Sunny, yeah, sometimes. On the test drive, you need to be listening for unusual knocks and bangs from the suspension, particularly at the front. These are 2.5 ton beasts. They sit very heavily on their suspension components, and replacing it all is quite an expensive job. Listen also for the gear changes. You know, make sure it's not hanging in gear too long, that there's no slippage, that there's no funny noises, that it makes it all the way to sixth gear. Use the manual function, slide that selector across to the left and manually go up the gears and just see what she's about. These are great gearboxes, they're made by ZF, but when they go wrong, and they do go wrong from time to time, it can be expensive and problematic. So as for actually choosing the right car for you, once you've got your head around the fact that it's going to ruin you financially, but make you smile all the way to the care home, then it really depends on how much you want to spend. You can enter into Bentley ownership for as little as £10,000, but if you do, you need to expect off the bat to be spending 2 or 3 grand on getting things put right. Here's an example. When I bought mine, the wheels were corroded and chipped, had been taken up against the curbstones, wherever it's been, in London or Nottingham, wherever it was at the time, and it was never repaired. So I decided to get the wheels done. Well, to get the wheels refinished on this car cost you about 850 quid. But I tell you what, it's probably one of the best things I ever did, because it just makes the car amazing. It looks like a new car from the right angles or the right distance. Mine isn't the greatest example, but it's really close. It's close to being that. And to me, she's an absolute princess. So everything costs more if you buy it for a Bentley. That extends to things like insurance, even road tax. Although if you go for a 2005, you pay roughly half the road tax that you would a 2006 for some reason. This will probably change. I'm sure they'll catch up with me and tax me to death. It's bound to happen. One of the things you might not expect is that actually people come and talk to you about the car. You think you might be seen as a bit of a, yeah, I'll take a few. It's not that way at all. I think people genuinely respect this car. They respect the style of it, the quality of it, you know, its Britishness. Yeah, I know there's a lot of German stuff in there, but show me where it isn't, you know. There's a lot of German in us when you come to it. Anglos and Saxons, yeah, Germany. So yeah, people have a different attitude to it. You even drive different in a Bentley, or I do at least. I mean, I drive a van normally, but you drive with a certain decorum. You're respectful to other road users. You let people out at road junctions. You don't expect them to thank you. Noblesse oblige, I think they call it. But yeah, it's a different experience to owning any other car that I've owned. And I've owned all sorts of cars, Range Rovers and Porsches and Ferraris and everything else. But I love my Bentley because of how it makes me feel when I take off my overalls at the end of a busy day doing what I do, involving bodily fluids coming out of pipes when they shouldn't be, and I can get showered and put on some cream trousers and go out in my car and enjoy her for 10 or 15 minutes before she breaks down. 40 short years ago, I used to clean cars like this for people who could actually afford them, never really daring to dream that I could afford to get one myself one day. So you can imagine my pride when I completed the customer registration form, the back of the manual, beautifully bound in leather and so well written it could have been a book. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. As sad as that might be to some people, it's important to me. And that sums Bentley ownership up. It's actually not just owning a car and driving a vehicle. It's about passion and it's about history. And it's a source of pride. Anyway, I hope I've given you some things to think about. If you've got any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section below. I'll answer every one that I get. And if you'd like to see more about keeping an older Bentley on the road, then please subscribe to my channel and like it and share it. Thanks for watching.